Hello everyone, so this is the second installment of my 90s Barbie collection. Another quick pan. Just in case you didn't watch the first video, which you should. And if you didn't, I will include a link in the description of this video for the first installment, which I go over the dolls from this point all the way over to this point where you see Hawaiian Fun Barbie. So yeah, I covered all those dolls. So now we are going to cover these, and as always, please be respectful and don't ask me if any of these dolls are for sale, trade, donation, or if I'll give you any. They mean a lot to me, and they each have their own unique little stories behind them. So each one of them means a lot to me. So please be respectful. But without further ado, we're going to start out with Troll Barbie from 1992. And she was another doll that was in really poor condition. That was from a lady from the flea market that I usually went to, that she had oodles of Barbies. So I got her with this rollerblading Barbie and my Sun Sensation Barbie right there. So, funny story is, I don't know like who owned these Barbies. I'm guessing that, like I said in my last video, I suspect a lot of the Barbies got cycled out through different booths around the flea market. So like they would trade with others to sell dolls. But like, she was one of the more ratty looking ones, and I always felt pity upon the ones who were more ratty. So, because I felt nobody would buy them. She's another doll that I got years later. I got this one back in 2005, and I got her exactly 5 years later. So, and this outfit, she was actually naked when I got her, and she was sold to me by a guy from the flea market who had a lot of DVDs, like I'd mentioned in the last video. And this outfit actually came on my Fountain Mermaid Barbie, which I'll mention her later on. Then we have my Teen Talk Barbie, which I got her at the same flea market. She is actually not on her original body because her original body broke down. Her talking mechanism didn't work anymore and her neck broke, so I decided to salvage what parts I could from her body and just completely body swap her onto another body that had the same style. So still the bent arms, still the 1966 bust body, and the bend and snap knees. The only thing different is no talking mechanism, and she has the bee print underwears. But she is in an original fashion. Then we have Fun to Dress Barbie. I believe that's what she's called, from 1992. She's the AA version. And she's really pretty. I got her at a thrift store. And then we have my Glitter Beach dolls. So I have 3 of Barbie. And then I have 1 Kyra, which Kyra was the first one. So one thing I forgot to mention in my last video is basically the way I have set everything up is which doll lines I encountered first so that I can remember. So from 1992, it was Troll Barbie, at least of the dolls that I have in my collection, of the ones I encountered first. So Troll Barbie, then it was her, then it was this one. So Kyra over here was the first doll in the Glitter Beach line that I encountered, and I just loved her. I almost thought about purging her from my collection because I did in fact go through a doll purging stage in my late teens to early 20s. So I used to get rid of dolls in order to get to a certain number. Also, the influence of family members had something to do with that. They would always tell me that I had too many, and I actually wound up getting rid of a lot of dolls that I regretted getting rid of later on. Which is kind of sad because, like, at first I didn't really regret getting rid of them after I did it. I felt kind of better about myself, but eventually I did regret it. There was other Barbies too that I had thought about purging out of my collection. Like, for example, that rollerblading Barbie over there in the pink outfit. I thought about purging her. I thought about purging my Sun Sensation Barbie made in Malaysia right there, because I had already had a Sun Sensation Barbie, so why would I need two? So it was all just an unhealthy thought process, and I eventually came to terms with my way of collecting, so that's why I have duplicates. And I realized that, you know, a lot of Barbies are actually, when you think about it, one of a kind, because with Barbies mass-produced, especially from this era, they couldn't exactly make each doll look exactly the same as another, or even as good as the prototype. So a lot of Barbies came out with different facial variants and stuff like that, also depending on their country make, but sometimes you could have two of the same country make with a completely different face, which I will try to show off in this video. And Glitter Beach Barbie is in line with that category. So Kyra was a doll I was going to purge out of my collection because I wasn't too fond of the face mold, and I thought that her makeup was kind of simple. But I'm so glad that I wound up keeping her. She's one of my favorite dolls in my collection. And then we have my Glitter Beach Barbies. So this one was one I got recently from eBay in that lot of really bad grungy looking Barbies. I'm going to go ahead and call it the cut and style lot from eBay. So I got her in the cut and style lot. So this was the first one I got, and she was in that lot of dolls from the flea market that was really grungy and nasty, from those people I told you about that are the grungy nasty dolls. So there's her, and I got her along with, let's see, I got her along with, this Malaysia Sun Sensation Barbie. So I got her with her, and they were both really dirty. Fun thing is, she was in this outfit when I found her. She was actually wearing that bathing suit, but I went through all my doll clothes and I put her back in her original outfit that I found her in at the flea market, just so y'all would have a little glimpse into, I guess, my doll world of my memories. So as you can see, now this was another lady I got her from the Goodwill, and she was in a bag full of their miscellaneous dolls and stuff, and she was wearing a Jasmine outfit from Mattel. And I was gonna pass up on her, but as I was looking at her in the bag, I realized that she actually had her bathing suit on underneath, and she still had her headband, which unfortunately I do not have anymore because I have a knack for losing things. So this was the first one I found. I noticed she kind of looks a little sleepy. This was what I'm talking about different facial variants. Now this one is another Indonesia one, so all three of them are made in Indonesia. Look how wide open her eyes are. It will focus in on her. There we go. Compared to her. And this one is the same type of variant as that one. So you look at how sleepy she looks, and then you look how wide open her eyes are. This one's hair is also like really, really, really thick. Her bangs are really thick. She's really nice. And the funny story about her is, this one actually, I found a necklace for her. This necklace was actually her original necklace. I suspect this one was a factory defect because you notice I have two necklaces for Kyra. And that's because this Glitter Beach Barbie right here actually came wearing that necklace. And she hadn't had a head swap or anything, because with early 90s Barbies, they usually break, especially if little kids try to swap them out. And the necklace was brand new, no scratches or anything on it. So I'm suspecting she was a defect of some sort and came with Kyra's necklace. So, and of course, this is the one from eBay, and she is actually wearing the original necklace. And that bathing suit I actually got an eBay lot of dolls. And here are my two 1992 Hollywood Hair Barbies. This one was actually my first one, and I'm currently in the process of rerouting her. So her body is being used by another doll at the moment, but I'm hoping to find that other doll body and give her her original body back once I have her hair completely rerouted. So there's her. I actually found her at that Thrift World thrift store. She had a severe haircut. And then this one I got her from that same thrift store years later. So I guess I'll go over the dates. I keep forgetting the dates. So I got her back in 2010, I got her back in 2013, and I got her this year. And I believe I got her back in 2010 or 2011 sometime. So yeah, and this one I got back in 2015. So yeah, and she was from the same lot of dolls I got from the thrift store as my Totally Hair Barbie, and then my Fashion Play Barbie, I believe that's what she's called. So yeah, and the funny thing about her and Totally Hair Barbie is you could tell they were from the same owner because their earrings were swapped. They were wearing each other's earrings. So I was so happy that they are still together. And then here's my lovely Hollywood Hair Teresa. I think actually Hollywood Hair Teresa was the first. Yeah, she was. Okay, so here you're witnessing me making a dolly mistake. So when I was a kid, Hollywood Hair Teresa was actually the first Teresa doll I had ever encountered. And she wasn't mine. She belonged to my uncle's daughter. And she didn't want her Barbies anymore, so they were in her back room. He lived in a trailer house, and all her stuff was back there, and I got to go back there and play with all her Barbies. And a lot of them had hack jobs. But I distinctly remember a Teresa doll, a tan Teresa doll with really big bangs, and she had blonde hair. And she had this really glammed out look about her. And I always remembered her, and I always wanted her. Lo and behold, it was Hollywood Hair Teresa with a hack job. And so she was actually the first one I encountered. And then there's that lovely lady. She's actually an Indonesia variant. And this one is a Malaysia variant. I used to have a China variant. She actually came with an eBay lot that I got that bathing suit from. But I have no idea. She had a hack job, but she kind of had a unique, like, hairstyle about her. She had the big poofy bangs, but the back was cut off, but it was kind of fanned out, so it looked kind of like a short, glamorous hairstyle, and I decided to keep her that way, but she got lost, and I have no idea what happened to her, but so far I've had all three variants, so they made a Malaysia variant, a China variant, and an Indonesia variant. And if you can see, their faces look very different. I'm not sure if you can tell, but yeah, they look very different. And then now we're moving on to 1993. So my 1993 Barbies go from here all the way to here. I believe she's from 93, Paint and Dazzle Barbie. So we have Locket Surprise Kayla, which I think she was the only Kayla that used the Teresa mold, if I'm not mistaken. She's actually a doll I rerouted because she was really... I found her at a charity shop. It was like a sort of garage sale that they had every month at this charity shop. And so she had really loose joints. As you can see, from her face, she has seen better days. If I can get it to focus. It's not wanting to, but she has really bad chips taken out of her makeup and everything. Her hair, when I found her, was in a ponytail, and it was completely ratted and matted. I tried to save her hair the best I could, but I wound up rerouting her, and I got her back in, I think it was 2008, 2007, somewhere in there, way before I knew how to clean dolls up. And then shortly afterward, I wound up finding this lovely lady. And if you're wondering why they have the elastics over them, it's because their little tab that locks the locket into place has broken off of both of them. So otherwise this whole piece will just come open and it'll just be hanging there. So, But I got her from some of the same sellers at the flea market that recycled out all their dolls, so they would like swap them around. So this one particular couple was selling Barbies, and they had a lot of them I recognized that were AA with the Christie mold. And then they had this one. She was in some sort of dress that I don't think I have anymore. But I looked under the dress and I saw the sweetheart cut of the bodice that was molded on. I was like, oh, she's a Locket Surprise doll. And these dolls are gorgeous. I love their long, crimped, thick hair. And I love their facial screenings and wild makeup. And especially Kayla. She is just a babe. So. And then we move on to this Camp Christie doll. So she was actually in the same lot with her. And she is in a lot worse condition than she used to be. She's always had a broken neck, so that's why she has a fat head. But I love her nonetheless. She's very exotic looking. Then these are my two 1993 bedtime Barbies. So I got her from that guy who had all the DVDs. And she was in pretty ratty, raunchy condition. And then I found this lady. So I got her back in, I'd say, 2008, somewhere in there. Again, not sure if I mentioned these, but I got her in like 2008. I got her shortly after. And then I got her, of course, along with her. So this one I got back in 2014, and she has her original nightgown, which I was so happy about. She had super crazy hair, but I fixed her up nicely. And then we have Camp Midge. So I'm not sure if that one is Christie or not. I think she might just be AA Barbie. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we also have Midge from that line. And apparently Barbie, I've never had her before, but apparently she had hair streaks that changed colors in the sunlight or something. I don't know. But like her hair streaks would get darker and it would become like Midge's hair color or something. But she was actually a gift. Well, she was a trade. I actually traded one of my friends from school some of my Barbies that I didn't want, that I feel guilty about purging now because I do miss them. But this one apparently belonged to her sister, and she had seen better days. But I love her nonetheless, and she reminds me of my friend every time I look at her. She's so cute. And then we have, now this doll has quite a story behind her. And she was the reason why I'm so fond of glitter hair Barbie. So back when I was living with my mom before she passed away, I went out walking all the time, and I'd walk around town and walk several other places around. And there was this run-down place that I had seen throughout my childhood, like throughout my early teens, stuff like that. And it was kind of like an antique-looking shop. And I always figured it wasn't like the place for me, so I never asked to go in there. But one day, I think it was back in 2007, somewhere in there. And I actually was walking around that area, and this was a store that was connected to a bunch of other stores. This was in Weatherford, Texas, and there was a lot of buildings that were kind of run down and abandoned back then. So this particular place was connected to another building of some kind, and it was, as I said, full of vintage items and stuff like that, memorabilia. And it was completely vacant, but everything was still in there like it was set up for business, which made it kind of a little bit eerie. So I decided to venture around, and lo and behold, behind the store, there was a little carport, and under there was this little, those old plastic playhouses, and it was fenced in, and there was lots of toys scattered everywhere. And next to that was a shed full of 80s and 90s and 70s memorabilia, as far as toys and documents and records and stuff like that. Of course, the shed was busted, the windows busted out, everything was busted out. And this was one of the Barbies that I found in that shed. She was actually in the doorway, and she was lying on the ground. Of course, the floor was completely caved in. and she was just lying in the dirt, halfway buried in the dirt. And she was wearing, I remember she was wearing a blue skirt that was like faux leather kind of over the top. And I think it was a Barbie skirt. And she was wearing, as a top, she was wearing the year 2000, I believe, Princess Bride Barbie's blue thing that goes over the bodice. And if you can see on the back of her, I'm not sure how well the camera is going to pick this up, but you can see the tan lines from her being exposed to sun from that outfit. So basically, I loved her to death. So basically, the condition she was in, her facial makeup was bleached out. She had her original earrings, but they were discolored. And they kind of discolored in an interesting way, to where one part of her earrings was like yellow and it faded into orange and then into the original pink, which looked like a sunset. So I always loved her earrings, and for a while I actually thought they came like that, which was really, because they were really pretty. But yeah, like I said, her face paint was completely bleached. She was missing a lot of face paint because of the decay she was going through. And she was missing a big chunk of her hair on the top. She was balding and her hair had been cut. So, and poor baby, I played with her so much. I remember taking her on the bus, and my friend and I would play with her. And since she was one of those bendy leg Barbies, we would always like pretend she was like a gymnast Barbie, and like she was a flexible Barbie. So we'd make her do like weird little poses and stuff. And eventually she wound up getting played with so much that her original face paint, I wound up removing that. I wound up removing her hair. Her arms wound up completely falling apart. So I actually had some spares. I cracked open her torso and replaced those and glued her all back together. And she has since had her neck broken. She has been through hell and back. I feel really, really bad for her, but she has been well loved by me, if not by the previous owner. And she was also, I also found her with another doll that I will be showing you later on. So that concludes basically my story behind Glitter Hair Barbie and why I love her so much. So this lady, I actually found her at the flea market back in 2011. And she had her bangs cut off. I'm waiting to get some hair to reroot to the front part of her hair. But I was like, another glitter hair Barbie, yes please. And, you know, I had always wanted a glitter hair Barbie. She actually had her earrings, but I took them out and lost them, unfortunately. But what's weird about the glitter hair Barbies is all of mine are different. But yeah, I also forgot to mention I'm in the process of repainting her face, so yeah, all of her original face paint is gone. I tried drawing her eyebrows. I know, horrible. Back then, I tried drawing her eyebrows on with pen. It has since faded a lot, but I am in the process of repainting her, and then I will reroot her hair. I know, shame on me. I repainted her face before rerooting her. That's a bad idea, but I will try to be extra careful. But yeah, I noticed with this one of my Tooth Fairy Barbies I had when I was a kid had this. And they were very unusual and unique to me. But instead of the bee print Barbie panties, she came with these ones. And you can see all the fancy designs that are on them. So you see all that, and they're kind of yellow because obviously she was left outside for a long period of time. I've also noticed that Indonesia Barbies and sometimes other Barbies from like 93 to 94 have this problem where they peel. My very first Barbie, which was the Cut and Style Redhead, had this problem, and she peeled all the time. But yeah, you see how she has that. Of course, the second one I got is a Malaysia variant. That one is Indonesia. So it didn't come to my surprise when I discovered this. So she had white panties. And this is just something I notice about dolls. Look at that. No designs whatsoever. No designs anywhere. And not only that, her face looked a lot different. Like the Indonesia variant I've noticed has like almost white eyeshadow. And then this one has purple, like almost lilac. So very pretty. And then I'd say back in 2016, I found this doll. See, I found her in 2008 or 7. I found her in 2011. And then I found this one in 2016. And she is a Malaysia variant, like that one. But check this out. Where have we seen those before? So whenever I saw her, I was like, before looking at her back, I was like, I immediately saw the panties. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same one that I had. Only to flip her around and discover she's from Malaysia, not Indonesia. So I was like, oh. But I already have a Malaysia with panties with no designs. So there's that. And then we have this one, which is my most recent one. Which her hair is all over the place. Sorry about that. So yeah, this outfit doesn't like to stay together, but she is an Indonesia one. Same as that one. Now, what's the kicker is all of the ones I have gotten before had white panties. Whether they were designs or not. This one has the designs, but look at that. No white. It's flesh tone underwears, but the same exact design. So I'm like, okay then. So there's like so many different variants of this doll out there. And that's one reason I collect duplicates, is because you never know what you're getting. And also, if you'll notice, like, they both have different hair colors. Like, her hair's darker, her hair's lighter. So yeah. So that's the story behind those. I wound up getting her from that thrift store, and this one I recently purchased from a like charity thrift store, basically. She was in one of my transformation videos of my thrift store dolls. So yeah, and when I found her with a 1971 original Malibu Barbie, and with some other dolls I made a video of. But she was in pretty raunchy condition as well. So then we have my Fountain Mermaid Barbie from 1993, and she was a victim of my attempt to dye doll hair. And I haven't rinsed it out because I was in the hopes that maybe her hair would get stained. Because if you saw her hair, yeah, you see that yellow color that it's turning. Her hair is severely discolored. And going back to her, she was actually wearing the Troll Barbie outfit, and she was sold to me by a really nice lady at the flea market. This lady was really nice. She was just trying to make some money so that she could take care of her grandchildren, something like that. I forget the whole story, but I bought a bunch of dolls from her, and like a sort of charity, sort of donation sort of thing. And she felt bad for these dolls because she didn't have any granddaughters and she didn't know what she was going to do with them. So fortunately I got a bunch of them and I still have them. So then we move on to my Paint and Dazzle Barbie, which actually, I want to say I encountered her first, but I don't remember. But I remember I found her from an elderly lady that I didn't really like that much. She was at the same flea market, and she always wanted like crazy expensive amounts for her dolls. So like if it was a naked doll, $3. It didn't matter if it was naked or if the hair was cut. They were all $3. She wanted $3 for every last one. I even pointed out to her once that she had a clone doll with cut hair, and since I collect clone dolls, I really wanted to save that one because I can reroute dolls, and she had a really pretty face, but she wanted $3 for a doll with a knockoff Barbie with cut hair. So I was not too happy about that. I didn't always like this Barbie. I thought she was kind of ugly when I first got her. I don't know why. I think it was just because maybe she had a face very similar to a lot of other Barbies, I felt. But she eventually grew on me. There was a time where I'd lost all her accessories. Like, she was just naked. And I eventually found all of her stuff. And this is all that she came with. She didn't come with shoes or anything. She was well played with. And she doesn't really have any paint, any of the glitter paint that she came with on her outfit, except for in one area in the back, I believe. But that's it. Other than that, she is mint condition. And I'm so glad I found everything that she came with. And then we have my favorite 90s line ever, and that is Cut and Style Barbie. So there is a huge long story that I will go through about Cut and Style Barbie. So when I was a kid, I remember my mom and my grandma didn't have that much money. And so I didn't always get Barbies and stuff like that. Occasionally I get a McDonald's Barbie from, you know, the McDonald's, get one in my Happy Meal or something like that. Or I'd occasionally get a Barbie clone from the dollar store, which I loved those just as much as I loved my real Barbies. But I remember distinctly when I was 5 years old, I was playing at my mom's house with my brother. And I remember I went looking for my mom one day. And I couldn't find her, so I went looking in her room. My mom's room was like really dark and mysterious. It was always like dark, and she had these like red, like dark wine red, satiny drapes on the walls, so it made the room look really mysterious. Especially when the sunlight shined on the drapes, it made it look like a like bright radiant red. And that's basically what I remember. It was that time of day where the sun was kind of afternoon, and it was really dark in my mom's room, so I just figured maybe, you know, she was in there taking a nap. I didn't really know. But I noticed on her vanity right next to the doorway, there was a doll sitting on her vanity, and it was a Barbie, and it just so happened to be the lovely Miss Redhead Barbie. Now that doll I don't have anymore, the original one, but I've since replaced her twice, and I really wish I had my old one. But the story goes, I went into her room and I found that doll, and she was like, I mean, before that I had found a Happy Meal Barbie, and that one was like my very first Mattel Barbie product, I guess you would say. But this one was actually my first actual Barbie doll that I ever got. And I just remember sitting there in awe, just like I was mesmerized by how beautiful she was. And she always reminded me of my mom, because there was a time when my mom would dye her hair this color. She had red lipstick. She had the forest green eyeshadow. She wore heavy makeup. She did her bangs, kind of like how this one's is, except they were swooped to the side. And so this one, you know, whenever I lived with my grandma, this doll reminded me of my mom. Needless to say, that doll wound up getting beheaded because shortly before I went to my mom's house again, I found a Barbie body. I don't know where all these Barbies came from. I suspect they were my cousin's Barbies, and she just left them. But I was always finding Barbies, and my mom was always finding them. They were always giving them to me. So, like, a little while before they had given me some Barbie heads, which I'll mention that later on, possibly in another video. But they had given me some Barbie heads, and then I went over there to her house, and I found a Barbie body in our toy box. It was kind of like a barrel sort of thing. And I remember finding a body, and she was like perfectly removed. Like, the head had perfectly been removed, and it was exposing the anchor. So the reason her head got snapped off was because I was trying to take her head off to expose that so I could see what it looked like. And needless to say, she snapped, and then I cut her hair. So, and I felt really bad about it because right after I got her, my grandma like spent part of her day like detangling this doll's hair, because when I got this doll, she was naked She only had her necklace, and her hair was a matted ball with a ponytail holder stuck in it. And so I felt really bad, because my grandma, like, spent half her day, like, detangling the hair, shampooing and conditioning the hair, and braiding her. So, and then I cut her hair off, so I wound up getting her from eBay, and I wound up getting her later on. And then I found this blonde at the flea market from the guy with the DVDs. This was a lady I found at the Goodwill. And of course, that lady was the one that I found on eBay. So, that will conclude my Barbies from the 90s. From 1992 to 2004. So I will talk a little bit more about these in the next video, because I do have a long story about them, which I really want to share. So I will see y'all in the next video, and remember to stay true to you.